I was there. I don't have to listen to it.
When you live in a beach resort, it's easy to forget whether you are playing or working. On each week's show, we settle in with a cocktail and try to figure out if there is a difference. This is Day Drinking on Delmarva.
I am Todd from GoodCleanFunLife.com.
And I'm Tony Rousseau, no relation, and we are here at Bethany Blues at Bethany Beach, Delaware.
Woohoo!
At the Barrel Room, as far as you know.
Yes.
Now, if you're listening to this for the first time, and we're hoping that you are because we didn't have a lot of listeners last time.
We had hundreds.
Hundreds, dozens, scads. But this is a reimagining of a podcast we've been doing for about a decade.
It's amazing that we've been doing the Happy Hour Toddcast for as long as we were doing. But it was time to set childish things aside.
Burn it down, start again.
Yep.
So one of the problems was we weren't getting any energy into getting people to listen. We were just putting all the energy into making the show, and we also just changed what we did in the show every couple weeks.
Right.
And so now we are doing this show this way from now on.
We've reimagined it.
Until further notice.
Yes.
But mostly what we're going to talk about is what it's like to live here at the beach. This is recorded in Bethany Beach, Delaware, as I mentioned. So we have a very tourism perspective on life, without even wanting to, because we make our livings down here.
Have for a long time
as thing makers. I don't love content creators. I know that you're a fan of content creators, but I make stuff. But I guess my resume would say content creator. I'm not going to not.
What do you make, Tony?
Oh, I make podcasts for a living. I write things for a living.
That's crazy.
I've written a couple books about beer. My main podcast that I do for my job is called This Is War. And it's
much sadder than this one.
It's not as high key as this one, but way more people listen.
Millions.
So maybe I should talk to you about awful things.
Yeah, right.
And then Todd has his own company.
We have a production company and a website that we started 10 years ago called GoodCleanFunLife.com. And it's basically, the Coconut Times online.
The Coconut Times is a weekly paper.
Which, by the way,
there's
this
no
is
way
terrible.
It's still up.
No, it is now only a website.
Oh, yeah.
I just found this out.
There's a great movie. No, I'm sorry. It's an okay movie, but there's a great line in it. It's called The Other Guys, and it's Marky Mark and Will Ferrell, and they're cops. Oh, right. And there's a press conference at one point, and one of the reporters is like, "Hi, I'm from TMZ, the print edition," and then the other guy is like, "I'm from New York Times online."
So which is worse?
Yeah, right. And so, here at the beach, if you live here all year, you make your living tourism related almost certainly. You're a doctor,
service industry,
you're a farmer, you're a teacher, or you're in the tourism business. Or you're like me and you don't really I don't work here.
So you say tourism business, I say service industry. Is that the same thing?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I was in the tourism industry, but not the service business. Everyone who's in the all right. So I feel like if you're at McDonald's, you're not in the tourism industry.
Right.
But
that makes sense.
You're barely in the service business either.
This first inaugural episode brought to you by McDonald's, which I haven't eaten at for a decade.
So there's a sponsor that's coming onto This Is War, or that we hope to get onto This Is War, and they sent me some information about them, and it's 3M, the company.
Oh yeah.
They're being sued because they sold bad defective earpieces, or they allegedly sold defective earpieces, as far as I understand it from the copy that I read.
Okay.
And so the ad people are like, so what do you think? I'm like, well, I don't think Post-its is gonna ever is gonna ever advertise. Like, am I afraid of making 3M mad? No, not at all.
So 3M is not the advertiser. The advertiser is going after 3M.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't care.
I'm like, oh, cool. The tape people.
Yeah, that's right. I have a great story about 3M now that I didn't get to tell anybody ever, so I want to tell you.
Great.
So Scotch tape is
the best tape.
Maybe it is the best tape, but its name is an epithet.
Epithet?
Yes. So when the guys were coming in to make, they were saying, okay, we have this new kind of thing. It's called tape. Like, that's how old Scotch tape is.
Yeah.
Like, there used to not be tape, and they're like, hey, look, we put glue on paper, and We can, and you can use it to tape shit. And people are like, I don't know what you mean. But the great thing about it is the people that they pitched it to thought there wasn't enough glue on there.
Right.
Because they didn't get what Scotch tape was for.
Right.
And so they said, take this back to your Scotch masters and put some real glue on it. Because back before the thing was, we're going to make fun of Jewish people for being cheap, they made fun of Scots for being cheap.
Oh.
So your cheap Scotch masters didn't spend enough on the glue, and that's why your tape is junky.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, well, we're naming that Scotch tape, and we're going to be the only tape. We're going to Kleenex we're going to Kleenex Scotch tape.
Right.
And so Scotch tape is really like a little
A
reminder
dig.
about a dig at the Scots for being apparently notorious. I never thought that about the
Right.
Scots until I heard that story.
That's funny.
Now I just assume that they are all cheap.
So now all of the new listeners will realize that Tony is a wealth of information.
But not targeted.
that is, and Scotch tape has nothing to do with the beach. But it's funny because I actually, there is a local business. Maybe should I tell the story?
Yeah.
So Brian Brushmiller has the Burley Oak Brewery in Berlin, Maryland. He's a friend for a number of years. They're getting ready to celebrate their 8th anniversary, which is kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
Because we started talking to him.
We started the podcast there.
Yeah.
When it wasn't open.
Right. And so he has a clothing store in downtown Berlin called Viking Tree. And he has created his own line of clothing, which is called Greedy Bastard, which is what he was called when he bought a building in downtown Berlin. Another local business manager made a comment about, just a bunch of greedy bastards. The beautiful thing is that it's this clothing line, and it is intended to encourage positive self-talk and like therapy and mental, and like it's giving proceeds to mental health and destigmatizing therapy and that sort of thing.
So
I didn't tell that story very well.
We have a language problem. Is it called GRITTY bastard or GREEDY bastard?
Oh, I don't know.
No,
I think it's.
is it greedy or gritty?
Did I say gritty? It's greedy.
I think my New Jersey ear heard.
Greedy bastard.
I thought you said gritty, and I'm like, I don't remember that.
Yeah. So Scotch tape. Maybe
Scotch tape.
Greedy Bastard will stick.
Yeah, who knows? So what we do every week before we go off the rails, we have a point, and then we go from that point to off the rails. So we're going in reverse this week, but we try to talk a little bit about what the experience of living here is like,
right.
Because we're hoping that if you're listening to hear that you either vacation on the Maryland and Delaware beaches or live on the Maryland and Delaware beaches.
Sure.
Because that's really what we're talking about. We're not gonna talk about local news unless
it's unavoidable. No, we won't. We never do, right?
I always, you know what? The problem is that I get so angry.
And then you get excited and stop using your "this is my
right,
voice."
Exactly, and then I get excited and I get up into my speaky voice. So I don't. We're not a news show. We're a culture show. We're a show about this culture, not broad culture Americanly, but American culture broadly. I don't know if that made any sense.
It sounded good.
Point is, we're here at the beach.
And we're day drinking.
And we are day drinking. And the point of the day drinking is twofold. Fold number one is, as you can tell from our job descriptions, we don't have like regular day jobs. Like we are at work. It is 2:00. It is a Wednesday. And we're enjoying a beer here at Bethany Blues in Bethany Beach. And we're not the only ones, because the upside, if there is an upside at living at the beach that's not an obvious one, it might be that everybody else is on vacation almost all the time.
Right.
So when you walk into a bar at 2:00, you're normal,
There's
right?
people there.
Right. And I don't know that happens in cities where everybody works different hours.
Yeah.
But also it happens here because we're the kind of people who, like if I was when I was on vacation last week, I wasn't sober like for a minute.
That used to be my definition of vacation is being able to have a beer with lunch.
Right, and now it's just my definition of life.
Yes.
I every time I have a beer at lunch, which is often, and not in a I should go to meetings kind of way,
Sure.
but just in a like I like to have beer. I'm a beer writer. I have beer around the house, and if I want to have a sandwich and a beer at lunch,
It's a perfectly European thing to do.
yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
And so that's the day drinking. That's the on Delmarva, and we can continue from here. The topic, the chosen topic for this week is something that I had a little bit of a tantrum about earlier this month, and I have the occasional Twitter tantrum about this topic, rising and falling, and it's this notion that people often will say, stop taking photos, enjoy your life. You can enjoy the picture, you don't have to see it. Everybody's obsessed with their phones, and they need to stop being so obsessed with their phones and more be obsessed with their experience.
Right.
This drives me fucking bonkers.
Stop taking selfies.
So,
It should be noted that you're you hold the record for the most middle-aged selfies.
It's embarrassing. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And so now I have my grandson. I don't even post him anymore. My grandson's with me a couple days a week, usually Tuesdays and Fridays. He'll come over just to hang out, just because I have the kind of job where I can just double up and then have my grandson, and we can play all day. I can play with an infant for 6 hours, and my boss isn't going to be like, "Where are those papers on my desk?" And I take an obscene amount of photos with him, and I don't too much even for me. I don't post those.
Right.
And also I've put on a bunch of weight. I don't know if you've noticed that the selfies have gone down as my face has gotten rounder and rounder. So as I start dropping weight again, I think that we'll see my return to selfies.
Here's to you getting healthy and me having to live through some more selfies.
I think the idea. I think having a nice big stout at 2:00 on a Wednesday is. That's the first step in any good weight loss plan.
Sure. It's lower AVB. This Evo Stout.
There's no way. This is an 8% beer.
Yeah.
This
I was wrong.
Yeah.
We are drinking. Rory, the manager here, brought us a dealer's choice, and before we got on air, I was saying it's kind of nice to have somebody just bring you something. I wouldn't think of having a stout on a 92-degree day with a heat index of 1 billion.
Yes, but on the upside, we're inside. It's nice and cool, and
this is a good beer.
It's a tasty, tasty beer.
So selfies.
So my wife likes to take, and not just selfies, but pictures of other people. Like there is a criticism, and I understand the need to make it. So let me talk about that for a second. I understand, like, you're trying to get somewhere. Excuse me. I understand you're trying to get somewhere, and then you bump into someone who's looking up because they're trying to get just the right light on the American flag or whatever they're taking a picture of, right? Or you're trying to order dinner in a restaurant, and you're just constantly distracted by everyone taking pictures of their food.
Right.
I get the.
It seems unnatural.
Yeah, and I get the reaction against it.
Yeah.
I understand the reaction against it. I just think that reaction is wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a book that I'll never write, and it's called The Bagel Manifesto.
I love it.
And the Bagel Manifesto, the subtitle is Learning to Lose the Culture Wars. And the thing is that we vote on culture together by our actions. We don't make a decision. We don't go to the polls. We behave in a certain way, and as that certain way becomes dominant, other ways of doing it fall off. What I hate about that is I can't get a decent bagel anyplace. And that's why I Bagel Manifesto, but I'm not going to start on the bagels. There are probably 15 or 20 episodes in the last show about bagels, and I'm sure there are more bagel episodes coming up here, but we're not going to get caught up in that. But the idea is that culture is something that we choose together, and when you participate in it, you can't participate in it just a little bit.
Right.
So what you're mad about is that they're voting for a culture that you don't want to participate in.
Yeah, so you're just resistant to change, you're a contrarian, or you're just an asshole who wants to, judge people based on any mindless thing that they are doing.
That's exactly the point. And I love judging people. I don't want to give anybody the impression that my favorite hobby is figuring out why I'm better than everyone else in the room.
Because that is your favorite hobby.
Oh, it totally is. So the question is, what do you do about it? It's not what do you do. It's not whether or not you should be mad. The question is, what do you do about it? And this is where I think we've run into a little bit of a problem as a culture broadly, and I think this is a good way to talk about it.
Sure.
What we want to do is stop other people from doing what they're doing.
Right.
When what we should do is ignore it.
Right.
And it will go away.
Right.
This week, the thing that I'm ignoring until it goes away is alcoholic seltzers, right? So they're going to be...
They're hard to ignore.
For now. Right? But what can I do? I can... Now, I actually did. I wrote and deleted like a screed about, how... the alcoholic seltzers where it's like the death of... And you know what? They're not. It's a fad, and guess what? There's always a fad.
Fads are going to change.
And it comes and goes. Like 6 months from now, we won't see very many of them.
Right.
A year from now, maybe we'll see some. I mean, I think the difference, just real quickly, because I brought it up, I think the difference with the seltzers is a lot of people like to go to breweries and don't like to drink beer. This is a good alternative. It used to be you could get a root beer or a regular beer.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now a lot of breweries are adding seltzers as like a peace offering.
Like hey, without having to make wine.
Without having to make
or
wine.
Booze.
Right, because they're still beer. They're just beer without flavor, and they're really boring to make. A guy I know, the guy that makes, well, not anymore, but when they were making hoop tea here, he was just bored out of his mind. He's like, there's nothing to it, and my job is not fulfilling anymore.
Right.
But we're making $1 billion on this dumb hoop tea.
This week's episode brought to you by McDonald's and Hoop Tea.
Anyone who wants to sponsor this show, you reach out. I will say anything you pay me to say, and I will not say anything you pay me not to say.
Right.
But until someone ponies up,
Yep.
I'm spending $20 a month to say whatever I want.
Sure. Absolutely.
So the selfie thing, my wife enjoys taking photos. She likes to stop and take photos of the dog. She likes to take photos of strange people's dogs. She likes to walk around, and she gets genuine pleasure out of it.
Right.
So when I hear someone say, stop taking pictures and enjoy your life, what I want to say is, what if taking pictures is what you enjoy? Should you kill yourself? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. You're not worthy to be alive if taking pictures is, being in the moment. We are Americans. Yeah. No one has been in the moment on this continent since the 1600s.
That's a bold statement.
Oh, that's a fact. I'm sorry. So there's there's monasteries Southern California. People have been in the moment for 10 minutes at a time every Thursday, at 2:00 or whenever they have yoga practice or whatever.
Right.
But, this idea that enjoying taking pictures is impossible.
Right.
We often do things just to do them.
Right.
Or don't do things just to not do them.
So it's interesting, my take, because of what I do, which is not exclusively, but in large part, taking pictures of people at bars having a good time. There is something that I realized, there's a difference between so I'm a professional, put your phone away, I'll take a picture of you.
Right.
There is something different from that experience versus you holding a phone at arm's length. First of all, I feel like it is like a physical or a personal space that lends itself to intimacy. And so you're taking a selfie either with your, by yourself or with your friends, and then you're putting it out there, and it's really an exercise in, in intimacy. Like you're putting you and your grandson. Like that's
right.
That's and that can be a very fulfilling thing. I understand that, if it's the 100th one, and I'm like, there's Tony and his grandson again.
Well, I had to stop posting.
But that's on me, and I think you're absolutely right. Where people will sit and they'll judge and they'll look at people on the beach. You know, there's whole accounts dedicated to boyfriends of Instagram, quote unquote, air quotes, models of like people from afar taking shots at the boyfriend who's taking a picture of his girlfriend in just the right light with the butt pointed in just the right way with the waves splashing and that sort of thing so that she can have that perfect,
right.
You know.
I'm sorry, and people don't like that or people do like that?
People are poking fun
I
at,
see.
you know, the poorest schmuck holding the phone, taking the picture.
And I made this comment earlier before we started when we were kind of working this out. Like, I don't know what we used to do. I'm sorry, I do know what we used to do. Like I said, we used to just stand in line and drool on our chests.
Right.
But a decade ago, how many people knew that there was such a thing as composition?
Right.
How many people
Right.
knew
Lighting.
that there was that lighting mattered, right? I don't know if you can be more in the moment than watching the light and watching the colors and watching the angles and watching the eye lines.
Right.
Like,
that's a really good point.
yeah, no, everybody's a professional photographer now. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now become professional writer so I don't have to blow my brains out.
The written word people.
Because you're not doing great on Facebook. You're doing fantastic on Instagram. Now let's work that over to Facebook. Sign up for Grammarly.
Twitter.
It's free.
Yeah.
Grammarly's probably not going to advertise on us either.
So there needs to be a platform where everybody is doing poetry instead of...
No, there is, but they're bad at it. And so this is the difference. And so I talk about this with my wife a lot. I talk about this with our friend Stephanie, who hosts the other podcast that I'm on. So What's Your Story? Talk about this a lot. There's, unfortunately, you can't. Yeah, you should practice writing in solitude. Like, people are like, I wrote this. Now look. I'm like, no, I wrote this every day for 15 years. Now look.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And there's no way around it. Like, you're not going to get better as a poet or as a writer by not writing.
Right.
But there's a pretense that comes from, well, I took the time to put 2,500 words in a row, so you should read it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's good. Like, I can look at a photo and say, oh, that's not a good photo. I'm going to continue my day.
Right.
I don't want to get 700 words into a shitty story and be like, oh, now I'll never get that.
So
10 minutes back.
is there? I'm still trying to equate the photos and writing. Like, is there an app that will come out that's a step above Grammarly that is more like commenting on sentence structure? Well, I think Grammarly, but you know, like more of those techniques, more thinking about.
Well, I think that the difference between writing is it doesn't only take practice, it takes accountability. I've spoken about this before, just from back when I was a journalist. Like, the difference between a reporter and a blogger is an editor. Not just, is this spelled right, but does anyone care?
Right.
Is it true? Did you do the back work to make sure? If you're just saying your opinion, that's fine. I mean, that's what blogs are for.
Right.
The blogs are for, like, I'm mad. Ah!
Yeah.
So I can't complain about that. But that's one of those things where I'm losing the vote in the culture. Very much like with the bagels. Like, no good bagels. And, you know, and prose is a little more democratized than I'd like. Not because I think that more people shouldn't get a say, but not enough people are good enough at reading to decide what's good. And so I think a lot of times I can't make Apple stop putting, like, BuzzFeed articles on my telephone. You know, like, when I turn on my telephone, there's like a news app. There's a news front page. And it's went away. And they change it every time. But they used adorably. And first of all, it's an awful word. But they didn't use it. It was like, you know, John was adorably sad or whatever. Like, I get what you're getting at, but you're voting against me because I want to make things clearer. I don't want to put adorable in so people are like, oh, what's adorable? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That's my truck with, or that's my complaint about writing. Whereas if you take a mediocre photo, yes, if there's a lot of cleavage in it, lots of people are gonna love it.
Right.
But no one's gonna say it's good.
Right.
And certainly
everybody's going to see where it's coming from and accept it as what it is.
And it's more subtle. And it's more subtle with language. So people are like, "Oh, adorably," and they're not like, "Hey, you just offended me."
Right.
They're not like, "Hey, you just thought I was too stupid to read your story unless you put adorably in the headline." And also, you shouldn't have wrote the story, because if the best thing you can say about something is that it's adorably done, that's not interesting.
So today's lesson: don't use the word adorably.
Don't use any ly words unless you can't.
Oh yeah,
you can't get out of it. I was actually, I don't know if I told you the story, but I was very proud of myself. I've never been quite as flattered as there was a while where Stephanie was after me to read Stephen King's On Writing book, and I don't like to read books about writing, and I had a little fallout with Stephen King. It was a personal thing. We don't have to talk about it. But she's after me, and come to find out, the reason was all the stuff that I was saying, like the little rants I would he would have rants in the book too, and I was super flattered. I'm like, all right, yeah, well, Stephen King's a genius, so obviously,
yeah, right.
But one of the things that he went off on about that was that adverbs are tough. You know, adverbs, if you can get around using them, you should, because you might not be trying hard enough. And that's like in writing, you have to try really, really hard. In photography, you have to learn really, really long. Like, I'm okay with a cell phone camera. I'm okay with a regular camera. I'm not great. But even my wife, who is a very good photographer, she'll say, I'm always surprised at your composition. Like, composition. But I learned from a guy who was like, hey, that's a poorly composed photo. Why would I just not use what came with the press release? That's junk.
Right.
You know, if you're not going to take if you're not going to take an interesting photo, then don't take a photo at all. It's kind of what he like when you're taking a photo, you're not saying, "Hey, this person was here." That's what it says in the story. What you're saying is, "Hey, look at this interesting photo. Don't you want to see what's going on by reading the story?" And once he made that clear to me, it made it more interesting. So, using, reflections or using odd angles or things like that is just something I appreciate. When you were talking about selfies before, I know you must have done it. I can't recall one, but I feel like it's something you've done. Taking a picture of someone's cell phone, like over their shoulder.
Oh, that's my favorite shot to get.
It's so beautiful, right?
Because and literally, so we've been shooting a lot at Freeman Stage, live performances, national acts, and I do videos, so it's it's less about the acts and it's more trying to to convey what the experience is like, and having a shot of over somebody's shoulder of a crystal clear image on their cell phone, and in the distance and blurred out is what is actually happening, like puts you there over that person's shoulder, and in
a real way,
very real way.
And that's the thing. Or just put your stupid phone down and pay attention. Like, no, no, I'm not. Like, I putting the phone down isn't going to make me pay attention. Picking the phone up is going to make me pay attention.
Well, so two things. One, I came up with a great app idea for writing. It's basically Grammarly, but it's just an AI of Stephen King yelling at you, right? And two, I love it, and somebody had said it before, talking about the put your phone down and just be present, or enjoy nature, like. These are advancements that we've, not just the technology, but we have the advancements to be able to work remotely from the beach, to be able to enjoy the sunshine, the water, the sand. 100 years ago, we were busy chasing down our food or running from things that were chasing us for food. So maybe not 100, maybe a little.
100 years ago, we were just battling diphtheria. But we get your point.
But,
the point stands.
Like, I like to be out in nature.
100 years ago, no one was here. No one was here at the beach on vacation. That was the dumb thing to do. Why would you go to the beach? What is there to do at the beach?
Right.
You want to go someplace and do something. You don't want to just sit and enjoy nature.
Yeah.
Right? And those are the same people that are like, why aren't you enjoying yourself?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But it's just it's funny. We were in Hawaii a couple months ago, and one of the very sad parts about Hawaii is that the Hawaiians were so proud and hardworking, and they considered all of the most valuable land inland where you could grow pineapples, and like that was
right.
That's where it was at. So when the king wanted to repay these Westerners for helping them out and showing them some cultures, like, yeah, you can have that land down by the beach.
Yeah,
that's and they're like snickering to themselves of like, that's really shitty land down there.
What, are they gonna put corn?
Nobody's gonna. You can't grow anything there, and and then 100 years later, and you get threatened by a Samoan cab driver while you're there, just because you're white, which I totally respect, totally understand. But yeah, the culture war is what is decided by
we're
en masse.
Yes, we're just voting. So if you don't like something that's going on, the best thing that you can do is to not do it.
So Natalie, my wife, partner, gets very upset with other people doing things. It's the Italian in her, that she has no control over, no impact on her life. They're just, doing things. Social media has listened to her, and now there's a mute option on stories and Facebook and, and all of this stuff, Instagram. That's a brilliant thing. But one of the things that I always think about is something that you've always talked about, and I think it was the byline for Beer with Strangers is drink what you like and be happy. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing, and
And if you can make a case for it, like I make the case for bagels all the time.
Right.
Like, if you can make the case for it, I think that you should. I don't like chain restaurants a lot. That's the battle that I lost a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I lost that battle before I was born. I hate the idea. I hate going. I hate the arrogance of you're too stupid to want anything but what you already wanted before you came in.
Right.
All right. Now, I'm going to visit my friend Keith in Atlanta. He only eats at chain restaurants.
Right.
He likes the comfort of not having to choose.
Right.
And I get it. I just don't agree with it. I think that one of the few things that we can all say we have is the ability to choose. It's the humanist thing about us. We can project ourselves into the future and think about how we will feel about a certain thing. Like in an hour, if I have a hamburger, that will make me happy.
Right.
But what if you have a crappy hamburger in an hour? Well, I don't want to take that chance. I want to be happy in an hour.
Right.
So I'll get a hamburger that I know is crappy.
Right.
And then I can't be disappointed.
Right. It's a crappy hamburger that
But
already...
you saw it coming.
Yeah.
And so there's distress when you're like, no, I want to go to a real restaurant. You go to a real restaurant and you're like, I wasn't happy with that. If I had gone to Chili's,
yeah,
I wouldn't have been happy either, but I would have expected to not be
I would
happy.
have known what my unhappiness would be.
And so making that balance, making those choices are just part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're one of those people who gets upset about other people seemingly obsessing over their photos, then just don't obsess over yours.
Right.
Just don't go on Instagram, or go on Instagram and make fun of it. Like that's you can do that. But just remember that you are still participating in that culture.
Yeah.
Like when you're like, that culture is wrong, then you're like, this is something we're voting on, and I vote against it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you ignore it, you're not accepting it as one of the options.
Right.
And that changes it from a vote to a cultural split where you're like, I'm not part of the culture that does that.
Right.
But in the end of the day, you want to take a selfie.
Yeah.
We all do.
Right.
I love the sound of my voice more than everyone else, but probably just a little bit. And we like ourselves. We like to see our faces, and we like to let other people know what we're doing. there is a fear, and a legitimate one, that we're so interested in what's going on that we're not paying attention, what's going on in other people's lives, that we're not paying enough attention to our own.
Right.
I think that's a separate thing.
Yeah.
That's not their fault for being on Instagram. That's your fault for spending too much time on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's...
I think we're also in I think there's a cultural vote that's going on right now of self-awareness, whereas the social media rise over the past decade has caused a lot of people unthinkingly to just like buy in. And I think people are a lot more skeptical, concerned, looking for all the angles.
But I will tell you now, call me Cassandra. That's a Greek reference. This is not me coming out. Call me Cassandra. You're already doing it wrong. What we ought to be doing is finding ways that we are culpable. And what we are trying to do is find ways to accept who we are and why we are not culpable in the evil. And so I'll close with this.
That took a deep dark.
Oh yeah,
turn.
no. I'm obsessing. I'm sorry. I've been thinking about this for weeks. You triggered me, right? So, it's embarrassing that. All right, we're gonna get a little political. I'm sorry, but it's a little embarrassing that as Americans we pick up our torture phones to complain about keeping children in concentration camps.
Right.
And I don't think they're like, oh, this is awful. I'm like, do you know how many people died to make that phone you're holding? You're culpable.
Yeah.
And we want to find what we're doing is we're working so hard to be not culpable, but also to be moral.
Yeah.
And the first step in being moral is to admit your culpability and then see what you can do about it.
Right.
I'm not going to give up my iPhone. I'm not going to eat at Applebee's. So I'm going to try to minimize my damage, but you have to realize that you are participating in a culture that's not good for anybody.
Right.
And you like it. Like I like having an iPhone. And I like
having a van.
Yeah, and I like not thinking about the Chinese people right now getting their fingers burned off so that they can sell my iPhone at $999.99 instead of $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a nice day. I don't know how we got there. You triggered me is the thing. I'm working on a self-help thing.
I don't know. You just kept
now.
yelling at me for being culpable.
I know.
I was trying to,
It's your fault, Internet.
Well, so I do think so. There's good and bad in everything, right? And I think when you're looking at the idea of the selfie here at the beach, when you're looking at that, I think we're in a point now where we are being more introspective about how we're doing what we're doing. And I think ultimately that leads to the greater good. And maybe ultimately you're 2 steps ahead and it's like, oh, well, we shouldn't be using phones at all.
I feel, no. We should just be paying $1 billion for them. My concern is that we're trying to make it so that we're trying to make our lives better without realizing the cost of making our lives better.
Well, this week on white American privilege.
Right, yeah. So we're gonna leave it there for now. we're way over already, so we're not gonna go up much longer. But we are gonna pull out our phones because we came up with a new tagline, and neither one of us can remember it, even though we both said we would. So I got nothing else. How about you?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, at the beach.
Happy hour is whenever you say it is.
Day Drinking on Delmarva with Todd DeHart and Tony Russo is produced weekly, mostly by dumb luck. You can join them Wednesday afternoons at Bethany Blues in Bethany Beach, Delaware, or find them online at daydrinkingondelmarva.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll check back in with you next week.
Good enough. All right.
Good enough.